There comes a time in every person's life when the weight of the past feels unbearable. The memories of wasted opportunities, broken relationships, wrong decisions, and years that seem to have slipped away can haunt us. Many look back and whisper to themselves, "I've lost too much, I've wasted too much time, and there's no way I can recover." But I want to remind you today, when God steps into your story, He is not limited by time. He is the redeemer of years, not just moments. And when He decides to restore, He doesn't just give back what was lost. He multiplies it, presses it down, shakes it together, and runs it over into your future. Time often feels like a relentless master, always moving forward, never giving back what it has taken. We measure our lives by the calendar, by birthdays, anniversaries, and deadlines. When we think about the years that have passed, it is easy to feel as though time has robbed us of opportunity and left us with nothing but regret. But here is the truth: God is not bound by the clock. He is the creator of time itself, and because He exists outside of it, He is able to redeem and restore what seems humanly impossible. What takes a lifetime to build, He can restore in a moment. What feels like decades of loss can be rewritten in a single season of His favor. When He decides to move on your behalf, no limitation of time can hold Him back. So often, we convince ourselves that it is too late. We look at our age, our mistakes, the missed opportunities, and we believe the window of possibility has closed forever. But God does not measure your potential by the ticking of a clock or the pages of a calendar. He measures it by His purpose. And His purpose has no expiration date. What looks like delay in your eyes may actually be preparation in His. The years that you thought were wasted can become the very platform for the miracle of restoration. He is not trying to simply take you back to where you were before. He is aiming to propel you into the fullness of who you were always meant to be. Restoration with God is never about returning to normal. It is about accelerating into destiny. Consider the way a harvest works. A farmer may labor for months with nothing visible to show for it, and then suddenly, in one short season, the ground bursts forth with an abundance of crops. The months of waiting weren't wasted. They were necessary for the growth that was happening underground, unseen. In the same way, your years that feel wasted are often the hidden seasons where God was preparing the soil of your life. When He decides the time is right, your harvest comes quickly, and the fruit is far greater than what you thought you lost. A powerful example of this truth is seen in the life of Sarah, the wife of Abraham. She spent decades barren, carrying the shame and disappointment of unfulfilled promises. By every natural measure, her time had passed. She was far beyond childbearing years, and there was no earthly possibility left. But when God spoke His word, time lost its power over her story. In her old age, Sarah gave birth to Isaac, the child of promise. What she thought was irretrievably lost was restored in a moment, and it became even more glorious because it happened outside the boundaries of what was possible. That single miracle erased decades of sorrow and proved that God works beyond the clock. The same principle applies to your life. You may think too many years have gone by, that the opportunity is gone forever, that your best days are already behind you. But when God chooses to restore, He does not need a lifetime to rebuild what was broken. He can compress years of favor, blessing, and opportunity into a short span of time. He can accelerate your steps so that you reach places you thought you would never see. And when He does it, it will not only surprise you, it will also testify to everyone around you that His hand is on your life. This is why you must never allow the clock to dictate your hope. God's promises do not expire. His ability to redeem time is greater than your ability to lose it. If you place your trust in Him, you will find that the years you thought were wasted become the very years He redeems for His glory, restoring more than you ever imagined. There is something deeply comforting about knowing that nothing in your past is ever wasted when placed in God's hands. We tend to look back at certain chapters of our lives with regret, seeing only the mistakes, the failures, the wasted energy, and the seasons where we feel we accomplished nothing meaningful. The human heart is quick to label those years as lost and useless, moments we wish we could erase and start over. But God sees those same years through a different lens. He sees them as raw material for the future He is building in you. The struggles, the pain, and even the poor choices become ingredients in the preparation of a greater testimony. When he restores, he doesn't discard your story. He rewrites it with a purpose far bigger than you could ever imagined. One of the greatest lies people believe is that their past disqualifies them from their future. They assume that because they wasted time, made bad choices, or walked away from opportunities, they no longer have the right to expect anything great ahead. But God specializes in taking brokenness and weaving it into something beautiful. He does not ignore the wasted years. He redeems them. Every season of hardship becomes a tool in his hand to shape your character and build resilience. The very things you thought disqualified you are often the same things he uses to equip you. Without the struggle, you would lack the strength. Without the pain, you would lack compassion. Without the failures, you would lack wisdom. Nothing is wasted in his economy. Think about a piece of stained glass. On its own, each shard is broken, sharp, and seemingly useless. But in the hands of a skilled artist, those fragments are arranged into a window that tells a breathtaking story. When the light shines through, your life is much the same. The broken and wasted years may look meaningless to you, but in God's design, they become part of a masterpiece that can only be revealed in the right season and under the right light. An excellent example of this truth can be found in the story of Joseph in the Bible. He spent years in circumstances that seemed unfair and meaningless, betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused and thrown into prison. To the natural eye, those were wasted years, filled with nothing but disappointment and injustice. But in God's plan, none of it was wasted. Every pit, every prison, and every betrayal was shaping Joseph into the kind of leader who could carry the weight of destiny. When the moment of restoration came, Joseph was not only elevated to the second highest position in Egypt, but also used those very experiences to save nations from famine. If you asked him during those dark years, he might have said they were wasted. But when he stood in his place of purpose, he could look back and say, "You meant it for evil, but God meant it for good." His wasted years became the very foundation of his testimony. Your life carries the same potential. Those seasons of wandering, of feeling like you achieved nothing, of walking through loss or pain, they were not wasted. They were shaping the person you are becoming, equipping you with empathy, patience, and endurance. They were preparing you to step into opportunities with wisdom and humility that you could not have possessed otherwise. God does not erase your past. He redeems it so that even your mistakes carry a message of hope. When you begin to see your life through that truth, regret loses its grip and gratitude takes its place. So when you look back at your so-called wasted years, remind yourself that God has been at work the entire time. He has been preparing you, molding you, and writing a testimony that will inspire others. Nothing is lost in his hands. What you thought was wasted will one day be revealed as the very soil where your greatest growth was planted. Restoration always begins with surrender. This is one of the hardest truths for the human heart to embrace because surrender feels like loss. We are taught to hold on tightly, to fight for control, to fix what is broken with our own strength. Yet in the kingdom of God, it is often in the very act of letting go that true healing begins. When you cling to bitterness, regret, or the belief that it's already too late for you, you are carrying a weight that was never meant to be yours. God cannot fill hands that are still grasping at the past. He cannot rebuild while you insist on holding the broken pieces together with your own effort. Surrender is not about giving up. It is about making room for him to do what only he can do. The reason surrender is so critical is because restoration is not something we can manufacture. You cannot restore yourself. You cannot undo the mistakes, erase the scars, or create new time where years were lost. Human effort has its limits, but God's grace has none, and grace only flows into empty hands, hands that have been opened in surrender. When you release the bitterness over what happened, when you lay down the shame of your past choices, when you stop rehearsing the story of regret in your mind, you are finally free to receive something new. Surrender creates space for restoration. Many resist surrender because it feels like weakness. But in reality, surrender is the most powerful act of trust you can make. It declares, "I cannot, but God can." And that declaration is the turning point. When you place your life, your pain, and your disappointments in his hands, he takes what is shattered and reshapes it into something stronger than before. Restoration is not about returning things to their former state. It is about transformation. It is about God building something so much greater than what you lost, something you could never have achieved on your own. A powerful example of this is seen in the life of the Apostle Peter. Peter was bold and passionate, but he also carried the weight of failure. After denying Jesus 3 times, he was overwhelmed with guilt and shame. In his own strength, he had tried to prove his loyalty, but when the pressure came, he crumbled. If Peter had held on to that failure, if he had clung to regret and refused to let go, he would have been trapped in his shame forever. But Peter surrendered. He allowed Jesus to confront him after the resurrection, asking him 3 times, "Do you love me?" In that moment, Peter laid down his shame and surrendered his failure to the one who could redeem it. The result was not just personal healing. Peter was restored into his calling. He became the rock on which the early church was built, preaching with boldness and leading thousands to Christ. His greatest failure became the very platform for God's greatest restoration in his life. This is the power of surrender. It takes what you thought was the end and turns it into a new beginning. It takes the chapters you wanted to rip out of your story and weaves them into a testimony of grace. But the first step is always the same: let go. Release the bitterness that poisons your joy. Release the regret that steals your hope. Release the lie that it is too late. Restoration begins not when you try harder, but when you trust deeper. And when you place those broken pieces in God's hands, you will discover that He does not just mend them, He makes all things new. When God restores, He never simply balances the scales. He does not return to you exactly what was taken or wasted and call it even. His nature is abundance, and His way of restoring always exceeds what was lost. In human terms, restoration might look like equal exchange. You lose something, and if you're fortunate, you get back something of equal value. But divine restoration works on a different principle. It carries overflow, multiplication, and increase. God delights in turning loss into greater gain, not just to heal your heart, but to display His goodness and power in ways you could never imagine. The human heart often prays for the minimum. God, just give me back what I had. But when God steps into your situation, His goal is never to bring you back to ordinary. His restoration moves you beyond the old measure into something far richer and more purposeful. He is not interested in returning you to where you were before. He is intent on propelling you into destiny. What was lost becomes the seed for an abundant harvest. It is His way of showing that no loss, no trial, and no setback has the final word over your life. This principle is beautifully revealed in the story of Job. He was a man who endured devastating loss. His wealth, his family, and his health were stripped away in a short span of time. For anyone else, this would have marked the end of their story, an irrecoverable tragedy. Yet Job did not remain in despair. He wrestled, he questioned, he even lamented, but ultimately he surrendered his pain to God. When restoration came, it did not come in fragments or partial repayment. Scripture says that the Lord gave Job twice as much as he had before. His livestock multiplied, his household was rebuilt, and his influence grew beyond what it had been in the beginning. The very chapters of loss became the backdrop for a testimony of abundance. Job's story teaches us that when God restores, it is never about survival. It is about overflowing blessing. The same truth applies to the prodigal son. He came home expecting to be treated as a servant, hoping merely for a place at the edge of his father's household. Yet the father didn't just welcome him back. He clothed him with the finest robe, placed a ring of authority on his finger, and threw a feast in his honor. The son asked for survival, but restoration came with celebration. His broken years were not simply erased. They were transformed into a story of radical grace. We often underestimate God by believing that the best outcome is just to get back what we lost. But His heart is to give you more peace than you ever knew, more joy than you have ever tasted, more purpose than you dreamed possible. Loss is never the end with Him. It is the doorway to greater blessing. What you thought was gone forever becomes the stage for a miracle that surpasses your imagination. Perhaps you've lost time, opportunities, or relationships. Maybe you look back and see a trail of wasted years. But if you place those losses in God's hands, He does not just patch them up. He writes a new chapter, one where the ending is greater than the beginning. His restoration is an upgrade into destiny, a multiplication of what you once carried, and a testimony that His goodness cannot be outmatched by your loss. When He restores, it will not only heal you, but also astonish those who see it. That is the nature of divine restoration. It always gives back more than what was lost. Preparation is often the most overlooked part of God's process of restoration. When we cry out for Him to restore what we've lost, our natural desire is for immediate results, for everything to return quickly and visibly. But God's way is far deeper and wiser. Before He places you into the season of restoration, He prepares you for it. He realigns your vision so you can see clearly where He is leading. He reshapes your relationships so you are surrounded by the right people who can walk with you into the future. He refines your character so you have the strength to handle what is coming. And often, this preparation feels uncomfortable, even painful. But the discomfort is not a sign that God has forgotten you. It is evidence that He is actively working behind the scenes to prepare you for more than you can see right now. Preparation feels like pruning. Just as a gardener cuts back branches on a tree, removing what looks healthy but could hinder future growth, God begins to remove things from your life that no longer serve your purpose. It may be relationships that are draining you instead of strengthening you. It may be habits or thought patterns that are holding you back. It may even be opportunities that look appealing but would distract you from your true destiny. Pruning always feels like loss in the moment, but it is actually the foundation for increase. Without it, new growth cannot flourish. When you are in this season, it can be easy to misinterpret what is happening. You may think you are going backward, when in reality, God is positioning you for restoration. The realignment of your life may be unsettling, but it is necessary. God cannot pour new wine into old wineskins. He must prepare a fresh container, your heart, your vision, your relationships, so that what He is about to pour out will not be wasted. Preparation, then, is not a delay of restoration, but the very first sign that restoration is already in motion. A clear example of this principle can be seen in the life of Joseph. Before Joseph stepped into his destiny as second in command of Egypt, he endured years of preparation that looked nothing like restoration. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and unjustly imprisoned, Joseph could have assumed that God had abandoned him. Yet in each season, God was shaping his character, teaching him wisdom, and preparing him for the enormous responsibility of leadership. The betrayal taught him resilience, slavery taught him stewardship, and prison taught him patience. By the time restoration came, Joseph was not only ready to step into a position of authority, but also equipped with the maturity to use it for good. If Joseph had skipped the preparation, he would not have had the strength to carry the restoration. This is exactly how God works with us. If you find yourself in a season of pruning, of being stripped of familiar things, or of waiting longer than you expected, do not despise it. Instead, recognize it as the proof that God is preparing you for something greater. He is aligning your life so that when restoration comes, it will not slip through your hands. The very discomfort you feel now is the soil out of which future fruit will grow. Preparation is never wasted. It is God's way of ensuring that when restoration arrives, you will not only receive it, but also sustain it. What feels like breaking down is often God's way of building you up. So instead of fearing the preparation, embrace it. It is the surest sign that restoration is not just on the way. It is already unfolding. The belief that your best days are behind you is one of the most damaging lies you can ever accept. It creeps into the heart quietly, often after years of disappointment, delay, or failure, whispering that the brightest part of your life has already passed and nothing ahead could possibly compare. But God's truth is entirely different. He declares that the latter will be greater than the former, and His promise is that no matter how much time you think you have wasted, your future can be brighter, fuller, and more purposeful than anything you have yet experienced. This is not wishful thinking. It is the reality of divine restoration. God does not merely patch up the past. He unfolds something greater ahead. When we convince ourselves that the best is behind us, we begin to live with resignation instead of expectation. Hope fades, and we settle for survival. Yet faith is built on anticipation, on the assurance that what God has promised still lies ahead. He has never called anyone to live backward, always reminiscing about what was lost. Instead, he calls you to lift your eyes and walk forward into what he has prepared. The God who restores wasted years does not intend to leave you clinging to memories. He intends to give you new testimonies. Think of how a sunrise works. When dawn breaks, no matter how dark the night was, the light always grows brighter. The sun does not rise halfway and then retreat. It moves higher and higher, filling the sky with light and color. In the same way, God has designed your journey to move from glory to glory, from strength to strength. Even if the night seasons of your life have been long and painful, the light of restoration promises that the morning ahead will shine brighter than anything behind. A vivid example of this is seen in the life of Ruth. She experienced tremendous loss. Her husband died young, and she faced years of uncertainty and grief. From a human perspective, her best days were behind her, and she had little reason to believe that joy could return. Yet in her faithfulness to follow God's leading, Ruth stepped into a new chapter she could not have imagined. She became the wife of Boaz. Her life was restored, and she entered the lineage that would lead to King David and eventually to Jesus Christ himself. Her latter days were not only better, they were immeasurably greater, carrying eternal significance. What looked like the end of her story was actually the beginning of a destiny that stretched far beyond her own lifetime. Your story is no different. You may feel that too many mistakes, losses, or wasted years have robbed you of your chance at greatness. But God's restoration does not just return what was lost, it prepares a future that will outshine it. The enemy wants you to keep rehearsing your past failures, but God wants you to dream about your future victories. The weight of your past cannot outweigh the glory of what is ahead. Every season of life has purpose, but the promise of God is that the future always holds greater potential. Your best days are not a memory, they are a destiny. They are waiting for you in the days you have not yet lived, in the opportunities you have not yet seen, and in the blessings you have not yet received. God is not finished writing your story, and his pen always writes forward. So lift your head from regret and fix your eyes on hope. The road ahead is not empty, it is full of promise. The best days of your life are not the ones you left behind. They are the ones waiting just beyond the horizon, days designed by God to carry more joy, more fruit, and more fulfillment than anything you have ever known. If you're standing in a place today where regret has stolen your joy and the years behind you seem heavier than the days ahead, take heart. God is about to restore all your wasted years. Not some, not half, all. And when he restores, he does it so abundantly that you'll look back and say, those years weren't wasted at all. They were the soil for the harvest I'm living in today. So lift your head, open your heart, and get ready. Your restoration is not just coming, it's already unfolding.